Thank you very much, and it's really great to see everyone here all energized. I'm lucky because I have the panel just before the coffee break. So, you know, people are still on a Friday morning dedicated to the cause of discussing cohesion funds, and we have a really amazing panel with us with very high-profile senior people, and I hope that you use the time that we have here to engage online and also to ask questions when they come on stage. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Executive Vice President for the Green Deal, Maros Sefcovic. Thank you very much. And Teresa Rivera Rodriguez, Vice President of the Government of Spain. Katarzyna Polińska-Nalisz, Minister for Development Funds and Regional Policy in Poland. Oliver Rupke, President of the European Economic and Social Committee. And Loredana Caponi of the Regional Council of the Apulia region in Italy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the time. Mucho gusto, Javier. Ya no me voy a hablar. Sí, a las 11. Thank you. Hello. Excellent. Thank you very much. And I feel the great energy in this conference room. I have been at other conferences, and I have to say the buzz is fantastic. And Executive Vice President, let's start with you. And arguably, I don't want to make your colleagues jealous, but arguably you have one of the best briefs in this commission with the Green Deal, the green transition. Tell us a bit about how this relates to the triple transition that we're talking about today and your remit of the Green Deal.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. First and foremost, I totally agree with the positive buzz and the energy, and I would like to congratulate my colleague Elisa Ferreira, because to have 1,000 people being here on Friday morning, still before coffee, it's absolutely amazing, and it just proves that indeed this topic is extremely relevant. And I think you know, we are coming to the end of political cycle, so there is a lot of, I would say, memories, anecdotal evidence, but to tell the truth, I don't know how we would make it over the last 5 years because of the different crises we went through. We all been locked in during the COVID-19. We never believed that the two wars would be so close to us, and we honestly didn't expect that we would have to go through such a dramatic energy crisis. And here Teresa was playing an extremely important role in the council to make sure that we can navigate through this difficult situation. And the fact that we had cohesion policy, that we had cohesion funds, that we had a commissioner like Elisa who can flexibilize the use of these funds, I think was absolutely needed to not only take on these challenges, but to stay the course. And if we are now going through very extensive clean transition dialogues, what is very reassuring, you hear it from all stakeholders, from all businesses, please stay the course. We need predictability. We shared with you the ambitions to be climate neutral continent by the half of the century. We want to live in a healthier environment, and we need to find a way how to bring what we would call business case into the Green Deal, because nobody kind of doubts that the legal framework and the goals are set correctly. So I think that without the strong support of cohesion policies, not only in the new member states, but I would say all over the Europe, across the board, I think it's very important, and the fact that we committed more than 40% to go to, I would say, the climate-related policies are absolutely key. And the last thing I would mention, very often, I mean, in my country, in Slovakia, we say that if you come in time with the help, you are actually helping twice. So everything we could have done to help the people who've been in the aftermath of terrible fires, terrible floods, or the weather-related tragedies, I think is kind of boosting the positive image of Europe, the clear, I would say, confirmation that European Union is built on solidarity, and therefore I'm not only happy that we have such a huge audience, but that we could deliver such a good result under the cohesion policy.
Brilliant. And we only get to meet here only every 2 years, so I thought that it would be good, and since we're before the coffee break, we can be a bit philosophical still this early Friday morning and talk a little bit about, from a big picture, are cohesion funds really working? And I want to hear from your different perspective. You talked about, you're quite positive, but what are the challenges with this enormous task of the green transition?
I think that from this perspective, clearly, I think that in many parts of Europe, we wouldn't be able to deliver such a growth in a pickup of renewables. We wouldn't be able to isolate so many homes to fund, for example, the charging infrastructure across Europe, or to support in many aspects the innovation and pickup of the new technology. So all these I think are very positive things. And we are together with Teresa representing Europe very often in different climate talks, and simply, that's a feeling which you have, is that you are very proud that we managed since 1990 to grow our economies by more than 60%, and at the same time to significantly, by far the most, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So we are actually proof that in a major economy you can do this, Caesar, that you can grow and you can cut the emission at the same time. But of course, this needs the support. What we can do better, and I know that we did a lot in that regard over the last 5 years. I was already referring to the flexibilization of the funds. Especially in this crisis time, Elisa came with the ideas that we shouldn't kind of restrict ourselves with the different limitation if it comes to which region can benefit from what. We've been looking for more flexible use of accumulation of the EU funds. We've been looking for the more innovative ways how to combine the cohesion funds with the state there, just to simply increase the financial firepower we need to support the positive developments in European economy. And if you look at what kind of level of investments we would need for the green transition, I think we would have to explore every single opportunity and every avenue. How can we leverage public funds to bring more private investment, to use the European Investment Bank, EBRD, our national promotional banks, just to simply bring more private investment into the transition, because this would be absolutely needed.
Brilliant, and I want to talk to you later a little bit more about this flexibility that you're talking about. But Minister Rivera, tell us a little bit about how you see it from your perspective.
Thank you so much, and it's a great pleasure for me being here, because I think that when Nicholas Smith was trying to introduce why it matters, and he quoted Jacques Delors, we realized that this is still the case. We feel the hunger of more Europe, more prosperity, more cohesion, and the combination of the internal market with cohesion policy explains why we have succeeded up to now. But it's also time to update and to check against reality how we can keep improving alongside these lines. There are many challenges ahead, and we know that this transition, how we can build a much more ecological economy, a much more fair social approach, opportunities for all, the use of the technical and digital opportunities to provide comfort and prosperity, but how we can address the demographic challenge. People that still feel that living in rural areas may mean being second-class European citizens. We cannot afford that. We need to combat that. People that think that they can create many new opportunities for their local communities, but do not feel how to access to the opportunities that may be accessible in urban areas. And I think that, yes, of course, we need to go through the green transition. This is a must. Do not make any mistake. There is no time for breaks or a delay for the green agenda, because that could come back over us in a much more harmful manner. So we need to go through that. But we need to pay attention to the social impact of the transformation and to pay attention to create opportunities for those feeling the fear of what it may imply in their day-to-day life. And this means that using cohesion funds and cohesion policies to create opportunities, not just to compensate, but to create opportunities, is so important. So the green driver, the digital driver, the cohesion capacities and funds to ensure that we can shorten this kind of inequalities on the ground is quite important. We have worked on that in Spain. We are in a country where we still feel that there is a risk of keeping this depopulation of rural areas. People that think that they want to accede to the same menu of services than people living in urban areas. And we know that we may be in a position to create and update the policies. We have benefited from the cohesion policies for such a long time. And now we realize that we want to count on the concrete local communities and to ensure that we make use of these opportunities as a way to combine the different approach of the different administrations to create and support diversity, opportunities, and a well-understood forward-looking approach on Europe. So I think that it is a fantastic opportunity to keep on building, but we need to take the time to listen, to co-create, and to update the tools we have in front of us with this, how to say, constructive approach, not just thinking that it's a pity or how we can come up from that. No, it's not just to compensate because we have a bad conscience of different approaches, because we have great people willing to do much more, and coming from the institutions, we have the capacity to invest politically on the ground and to create this positive atmosphere, as I say, to build more Europe. Building Europe is a fantastic adventure. So coming back to the laws, I think that we need to update the challenges in the 21st century to this reality.
Very good, excellent. And I want to hear from you about the Spanish experience later on specific cases and industries and how it's worked out in Spain. But Minister Prusinska, tell us a little bit about your view from Poland.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for invitation to participate in this panel. I represent the country which is the biggest beneficiary of cohesion funds, so it won't be a surprise if I tell that cohesion policy is undeniably one of the most important and visible EU policies. Its long-term effects have a positive impact on the dynamics of socio-economic development, and its results are clearly visible throughout the entire EU, not only in the beneficiary countries and regions, but also in more developed member states. As for Poland, our internal analysis show that since our accession in 2004, and we will be celebrating the 20th anniversary of our EU membership just in a couple of days, our GDP per capita narrowed the Polish GDP per capita almost doubled, and this happened to a great extent thanks to cohesion policy and obviously other EU policies and our membership in the EU. So this confirms that cohesion policy is successful and necessary. However, for decades, the major task of cohesion policy was to increase the productivity and support the socio-economic growth of member states and territories. Now the situation in Europe and beyond Europe has changed. We are facing, and I will not hesitate to say that we are facing the existential crisis, climate change, military conflict in Europe, and the global democratic crisis. And knowing this, we should understand that if everything is changing, we also should think about how to change, how to adjust to the new realities, EU financial instruments, and first and foremost, of course, cohesion policy. And in our understanding, the cohesion policy should be much more oriented towards building resilience and support the adaptation of territories and member states to contemporary challenges. In Poland, we also understand that although green transition is absolutely crucial, it cannot be implemented against people. Therefore, we should put greater emphasis on the positive story. We should talk and we should demonstrate to people the opportunities. And there are huge opportunities in the green transition, such as cleaner air, local economic developments and new jobs, increased financial flows, development of a low carbon and efficient economy, innovative technological development, increased energy dependence and energy security, and of course, an improved quality of life for citizens. And this is all very important. And we should also think in a very innovative way about the future of cohesion policy. We have started this discussion in Poland, and we are absolutely ready and willing to play the active role in the European debate on this issue. Perhaps we need more unified system, a joint frame of programming and implementation of all EU and national policy focused on achieving transformation goals. But the basis for this unified system should be cohesion policy, revitalized by taking some elements of other instruments, mainly RRF instrument, especially when it comes to linking investment with reforms, result orientation, and using simplified system implementation based on national rules. I think I will stop here.
Thank you, Minister, and very interesting to hear the perspective of Poland, where you are also geographically located. And as you were speaking, it reminded me what I was reading this morning, bits of the 9th cohesion report, as you do on a Friday morning. And it really talked about this importance of the narrative and making people feel like they're not being left behind. We know when people feel like they're being left behind, what can happen. Like in my adoptive country, the UK, we know how that turned out. And so I wondered, Oliver, from your perspective and your privileged position in your agency, how do you see these things?
Yes, thank you very much, Javier. Allow me to start. I cannot start without thanking Commissioner Ferreira first of all, for the invitation to speak at this really crucial forum, but also for the hard work that you have done and for the large involvement, I would say, of civil society and social partners in the debate about cohesion. It is crucial. It was very much appreciated because cohesion policy, from our point of view, is not only the key instrument for long-term investment in Europe. It is, of course, it is. It boosts the single market, and it's a cornerstone for competitiveness and long-term growth, but it's much more. It's much more. It's also the key instrument or one of the key elements for EU integration. I think this is important. EU integration, it is somehow the glue that keeps Europe united. I don't keep the copyright on this sentence, but I fully subscribe to it. It is an essential function. And therefore, we are really grateful that we can contribute to the work and also to the high-level report that was published. We meet here after the publication of the 9th cohesion report, and allow me to say that this report is the illustration of the importance of cohesion policy in these turbulent times. To address crisis spontaneously, but also to have a long-term approach in order to have more convergence and more cohesion policy in Europe. And I think we are convinced in the ESC that cohesion policy is key to mitigate the asymmetric impact of the recent crisis that Europe has faced. And you, Javier, you said no one should be left behind. This is also our, I would say, our leitmotif for cohesion policy. No region and nobody should be left behind. I think cohesion policy plays here the crucial role. And let me start also with one, quite straight with one point. Cohesion policy, if it should be successful, it needs also sufficient funding. And we would say it needs more funding. We assessed also the proposal for the MFF. It doesn't meet 100% our demands. We think it could be more ambitious because the challenges ahead of us are enormous. It was mentioned, economic challenges, competitiveness, but especially social inequalities across Europe. And I will come later back to this future enlargement procedure. I think this is also key, and we already have to think about how to shape our cohesion policy for these challenges. We were one of the first EU institutions that could contribute our views on the question of future of cohesion policy, and we as ESC, we are really convinced that the new impetus to cohesion policy is necessary. It must be underpinned by all EU policies. And I want to reiterate that social cohesion plays a key role here. We were talking about social inequalities. We have still a significant number of people at the risk of poverty or social exclusion, especially the most vulnerable groups or the groups that have also lower employment rates, women, young people, migrants. So here we need key investments in education, in employment. And here cohesion policy plays a key role apart from the green and digital transition. And I would also like to support what Nicola Schmidt said at the beginning. I think housing policy will play also an increasing role, increasing importance at European level. I had the privilege to attend one of the last meetings of the housing ministers, and there was a large agreement that more or less all countries in Europe are facing this challenge of a lack of affordable housing. I think Europe has to play a role here, and I'm really grateful for this Liège declaration that has been adopted by the ministers and by the Belgian presidency. But in our view, and here I will finish, civil society, the actors on the ground, have to play a crucial role when it comes to implementation of cohesion policy. Of course, regions, cities, but also civil society and social partners. And here we still see a lack of involvement. We think it is necessary that they are involved in all consultations, that they have ownership. I think then we can design the policy on the ground and can make sure that it meets the need of regions, but also of the social actors.
Excellent, thank you, Oliver. And we're privileged to have someone from the ground in Italy, the region of Apulia. Tell us a little bit about how you see things working or not working in your region. And we'll have to use our headsets.
Sì, certo. Mi scuso con voi se parlo.
Yes, apologies. I'll be speaking Italian, but I'd prefer to speak my mother tongue and not display how bad my English is. Right. I'd like to start by thanking Commissioner Ferreira. Even in the Committee of the Regions, we are fighting a number of challenges side by side. What we see is very often when it comes to the usage of cohesion funds, people often say they haven't actually solved the problem. And then people say, well, if cohesion funds have not managed to stop the disparities, then do we actually need it? And I think that is a major risk, a major danger. It's true that there are disparities. Sometimes they're very big, but these disparities come from really deep crises which accentuated some of the challenges that some populations or territories were facing before. There's the triple crisis that we're dealing with: economic, environmental, digital, demographic. All of these challenges we need to deal with. There's the pollution issue as well. And obviously what you need is measures. National investments have unfortunately always been decreasing, and that's why it's far too easy to say that cohesion funds haven't worked. What we need to do is look at national investments. And when we do that, we realize that given the reduction in national investments, cohesion funds have had to be used to bridge the gap. And that's not fair. That's not fair. The cohesion funds are supposed to support national investments, not replace them. I believe fully in the cohesion policy and the cohesion funds. I believe in everything that's been done. The only thing I'd like to add, which is forward-looking and very important, is the fact that we talk about various procedures to try and get everyone on board. And I think we need to always involve all the stakeholders when it comes to the usage of resources. And if that were the case, there wouldn't be a negative outlook on the policy. We need to bring everyone on board: citizens, researchers, local government, regional government. All of the stakeholders need to be involved to understand the challenges and project a solution together. Let's look at the cohesion policy with regard to waste. There's no point in talking about a crisis that is environmental in nature if we don't first look at how we deal with waste management. And what you need is the circular economy. We need to reuse, reduce, recycle. We need to communicate. We need a whole awareness-raising campaign, and we need a mindset change, and that's very important. And of course, we need the infrastructure. And who is going to create the infrastructure? Well, we could not have built this infrastructure without the cohesion funds. Then sustainable mobility. It's very easy to talk about making everything green and having a green economy and saying that the Green Deal is too far away and has a negative impact on people's lives. But what are we doing ourselves to work on sustainable mobility? What are we doing to get rid of cars? Up to now, we have invested money from the cohesion funds for these objectives. In Italy, cities as a whole, especially in my region in Puglia, have changed the way that they work for citizens. What we now do is focus on well-being, on increased quality of life. We invest in parks and bike lanes and in electric vehicles, but we need investment for that, and we need to raise awareness. And that is something that we've seen too often. There is a will to do something. The local administrations want to have a smart and technology-based system, but they don't communicate well with the citizens, and citizens therefore think it's easier to drive their car to cross a couple of roads to get to work instead of maybe getting on their bike, which is beneficial both for the environment but also for their health. The problem is that this beneficial effect is only seen later down the line, so people only notice the effort that they have to make to implement these solutions instead of seeing the benefits. We need to engage in a whole host of activities to ensure that our planet isn't destroyed. And if everyone realized that, I think it would be easier to understand where cohesion funds are used. And the last thing I'd like to say as a conclusion, I might give you an example, in fact, of what we're doing in Puglia, if I may, if that could be of interest to you. The social side of things. One of you said that we're going through an existential crisis. I can't remember who said that, but it is true. Some people see investment funds in a way that really should be reviewed, in my opinion. What is investment? People think that investment to build a theatre is investment expenditure. What is theatre? Is a theatre the building, or is it everything that takes place within a theatre? Very often, auditors, for example, look at how much was spent on building the theatre. But the theatre is not just a collection of walls like every other building. What you need to look at is what you do in addition to building the walls, it's creating culture, creating interaction. That's what citizens need more than ever before. So if we look at cohesion funds, we must also be able to use them not only to invest in bricks and mortar, but to make something of these investments, give them added value. We say, okay, we need to have more creches and daycare facilities so that women can enter the workforce and so that we can use our gender mainstreaming better, then you can't just think about the walls that are necessary to create those daycare centers. You need to think of the resources necessary to manage them, which the administrations may not have. How about stadiums? If we only looked at the practical side of building a stadium, we wouldn't have created any added value and quality of life for people. And that's too often what's missing. What we need is that link, the connection in the cohesion policy, the link between building this investment and the additional expenditure to ensure that this investment can be used. Thank you.
Brilliant. Super great point, actually, and I want to take that point to you, Executive Vice President. I mean, has there been a disconnect? Are we just focusing on the walls and not thinking about the bigger picture?
I think that we went already the great distance over the last 5 years to really adjust the cohesion policy to the real needs. We've been, as I said, also very much forced to do that because of very adverse environment through which we had to go through. But I think we've been also responding to the calls from the regions, from our member states, how to make the EU funds more user-friendly. And I know that Lisa was making the great positive steps in that direction. At the same time, I think when we will be charting the way for the new cohesion policy, we also have to think again how to combine, I would say, the responsible management of the budget and not to go through, I would say, excessive restrictive conditions and multiple controls, which you would hear from the cohesion countries sometimes are kind of even scaring off the potential applicants to apply for the cohesion funds because they're afraid of the complexity, they're afraid that they will not be able to deliver on time, and they're afraid simply if in the end there will not be this clawback clause which would kind of then take back the cohesion fund. And I think it's also a very important element what we discuss very often also in the college, that we in the European Union are really privileged by having high quality civil service and high quality civil servants, but we also have to admit that not everywhere, not in every region office you have the same administrative capacity as we have in Brussels, even though I can tell you we are pretty stretched right now. But still, we would, I would say, need to think a little bit more how this would be a little bit more user-friendly. For example, if it comes to different financial instruments, we realized, and that was one clear message, be it from our friends who are very active in cohesion policies, but also from the business circles, that they would very much appreciate to have some kind of one-stop shop advisory hub. You know, if I have a good project, if I have a good plan, where to go, you know, how to apply, how to start. Is there somebody to help me, to kind of guide me through these rules and procedures? And the same goes for permitting. And we've been discussing it also with Teresa a lot, that if it comes to some kind of bigger investments, that would be great to have the same kind of one-stop shop as we did it for some of the key projects across Europe, also in the government, so we can help the project promoters, but also the applicants for the funds to kind of not be that, let's say, worried about the complexity of the process, but to kind of guide them through. Because we need to get this money to the ground, because we see how much they are needed. So I think this is one lesson which we clearly learned. But I think that we've been really fine-tuning the use of the cohesion funds on the go, I would say. I mean, we had to adjust a lot during the COVID-19. Then, of course, during the energy crisis, and I said we introduced a lot of flexibilities which have been very much appreciated, and also with the next generation EU budget, I think we kind of prevented the harsh lessons learned from the austerity times we had after the last financial crisis, and I think thanks to that we improved the resilience of the European economy, that despite these multiple shocks, which are really unprecedented for the European Union, we went through over the last 5 years, that our economy is performing, we didn't lose the jobs, and despite of all that, we faced the crisis, I think, standing up and going through them and being prepared, of course, for this very, very fierce competition, which is new on the global level. And I think that's the lessons learned, which I'm sure after the very well presented the cohesion report will be taken up by the next political representations which will come to Brussels from the European Parliament elections results, the next European Commission, because we would need to get the money to the people, to the region faster, simpler, and I think in a more flexible way, because the time simply is flying fast these days. And I think that we would need to adjust our policies to this new imperative and to these new challenges which are facing us.
Really interesting. And Minister Rivera, when Loredana Capone was speaking, and I think she touched a nerve with the audience. I cannot wait for the coffee conversations later, but I saw you nodding, and it seemed like you related to it. Give us a bit of your reaction.
Well, I love her comments, and I know that Elisa has been trying to push forward to introduce cohesion policies that address the soul, not only the infrastructures. I think that thinking in global terms, it may be fantastic to provide good GDP figures, to provide good infrastructures, highways, ports, I don't know how many things. But if we only care about highways and ports, people may use them to escape, to go there where the wealth concentrates. So I think that tackling cohesion policy means addressing the soul of people. And I think that this is a different approach. I think that we need to take into consideration what the aspirations are, what are the services that they needed to be provided, how we can create the pride of belonging, or as Enrico Letta was saying, the liberty to stay. And I think that, very honestly, the digital and the green transformation are great, great opportunities to build on this. But we need to tackle and to build these challenges in a very different manner, because this means going to the ground. This means working with people. This means identifying the concrete aspirations and to enjoy the difference, the creativity, the manners we can address the expectations of everybody. And it is slightly different from what we have trying to do for a very long while, which is good. But it doesn't make a difference to stay and to create additional wealth or additional sense of belonging. You have good figures, good infrastructures, but what does it mean in terms of the human approach? And this is why I think that the human, social, and the environment green drivers are so important when trying to identify why cohesion matters, why cohesion policy matters, and how we can build a much more united Europe along these lines. My impression is that we have understood that. And my impression is that when there are people claiming and yelling against the green agenda and I don't know how many things, it is not so much that they expect from the institutions to stop, not to invest in preventing damages and harms and so on, but to come along with them on how to provide the right answers. And this is also the way to build other opportunities. We have been working, thanks to Elisa, in the phase out of coal. And we have learned a lot. Phasing out coal meant working with local communities, identifying the small projects that could create new opportunities on the ground. We have worked a lot on water planning infrastructures and the protection of wetlands to the extent that there was someone making jokes saying that we had become the diplomats of wetlands. And something we learned two things, two very important things along the experience. First, dedicating political and budgetary efforts to Doñana, the cathedral in terms of wetlands protection in Europe, or Mar Menor, or many other fantastic ecosystems, requires dedicated efforts in green policies, ecosystems restoration, water policies, and so on and so on. But we were not going to succeed unless people felt that there were other manners to understand their prosperity and their future beyond drying the wetland. So you need to identify how to combine the socioeconomic aspirations in a virtuous manner with the green and social policies. And once we get this connection and people understand that if there is no ecosystem, there will be no strawberries. If there is no ecosystem, there will be no agriculture, or there will be no life or no fertile soil. But that they feel the commitment, the political engagement to provide a future, it could work. And I think that these are, of course, domestic small examples. These are tiny examples to illustrate what it means investing on the ground and what it means investing on the ground through investing on the people and the local authorities. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's not going to work. But I think that it also draws the example of how in the continental level, working in a better Europe, we need to pay attention always to people, infrastructures, good figures, GDP, great transfers of wealth can only happen and succeed if we reward the consistent mid and long-term approach, and that means taking into consideration the human factor, the expectations of people.
And very good points. Thank you very much. And I want to continue on this human factor thread, but the Executive Vice President needs to leave in a few minutes. So I just want to come back to you before you leave us. Tell us a bit about, and one of the key parts of this panel is about competitiveness, and it's a term that some journalists like myself are not already exhausted hearing about it. But how do we connect everything to the ambitions of where the political direction, at least now and for the next commission? How do we join the dots?
I will go to that immediately, but if you allow me, listening to the previous interventions, just two very, I would say, human stories which very much underpin the connection between the living people in the ground and the cohesion policy. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, I was visiting Katowice, and this is a very proud coal mining region. And of course, as you can imagine, coal was very important for this, and still is for this region. And I had a meeting with the local parliament. So I can tell you, even though I'm the big guy, I was feeling certainly, stressed a little bit to go into that meeting. And in the end, I have to say that the conclusion of the discussion was totally different than I expected, because the message I was getting was, please work with us as closely as possible, because we do not want to end up in the situation when the young people would leave the region because there will be not enough investment, because the people would have, their children would have respiratory problems, because we want to have, to use Enrico Cohen phrase, liberty to stay. And we want to be prosperous regions. We do not want to leave the town. We do not want to leave the region. So help us to transform and bring the new investment. And this is exactly what happened. And Katowice today is one of the regions where we have a huge battery factory, where there is one of the biggest congress centers I have ever seen. And it's very prosperous regions. And a similar story, when I was just visiting one of the projects in Serbia, in Obremovac, which was not very expensive, which just helped with the filters and with energy efficiency in one of the power plants. And I was asking the people in the streets, do you like this project? What is, I would say, the most important feature of, that European investment? And they told me, sir, the first thing is that our children, for the first time in their life, saw that the snow is indeed white, because it was black. We have by half cut down the respiratory disease in the schools, and the crop, as Teresa was referring to, are 20% higher because the soil simply became much more fertile. So this is what we can do when we use the money wise and when we use them in a way which combines improved environment, improve health condition, of course, bring new job opportunities. And coming to competitiveness, I'm glad that you said that as a journalist you're tired of hearing it, because it means that finally we get the message out. You know, that's I think the good sign, because I think competitiveness in this new world is extremely important. We see that we are living in totally new geo-economic situation where the competition is super fierce, not only from China, but also from our American friends. And I think therefore we simply need to kind of sharpen our minds and to make sure that Europe will be able to compete on what we actually started. We started with a clean transition, we started with a green transition, we invented photovoltaic panels, and where we are now in that situation that we have to import almost all of them from China. And of course we have to do our utmost that by pioneering, I would say, this new modern way of running the economies, of approaching to the, I would say, the sustainable and clean production with a low carbon footprint results should be properly rewarded, and that our entrepreneurs across Europe should be punished that because of the public procurement, somehow we always end up with the cheapest alternative, which comes somewhere from far away, usually from Asia. And we know that the competition of today is not kind of taking place or taking in the sectors which are the sectors of the last century. We are competing on who can produce better batteries, more efficient electric vehicles, who would have better electrolyzers, who can make cheaper green hydrogen, who can make more efficient cities. And all these are the areas where we have to put much more attention than in the past. And therefore, to be honest, I'm extremely pleased and glad that we are combining the Green Deal with competitiveness, because it was the idea from the first side that the Green Deal should be our growth strategy. But we feel that now we lay down the groundwork. Nobody disputes that we have the most sophisticated legal framework for the green transition and the Green Deal. Now we have to implementing it, and we have to do it together with industry, with social partners, with the regions, with NGOs, in a way that it would enhance European competitiveness. And it's a big task, and I think that it would be one of the priorities for the next Commission for sure.
Brilliant, and I like your liberty to stay phrase that you borrowed from Enrico Letta. Now, before I let you go, you have a busy agenda. You're dealing with the aftermaths of a breakup. How do you expect the Gibraltar conversations to go? I have to ask the question, or my colleagues will be very upset with me.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm really pressed by time, because I mean, in few moments I know that the delegations from Spain, from UK, from Gibraltar will be landing in Brussels, and we really would have very, very intense discussions. I have to say that yesterday when I was preparing for the meetings, I think we had 18 rounds of negotiations, and of course these are the talks where you, of course, have to keep the big picture, but you also have to be extremely strong on the detail, because we are again trying to find the solution which would be the best people for the whole region, and we want to respect the whole sensitivities. But I know that we achieved very solid progress over the last couple of weeks. I think there is very good chemistry among all of us, and I hope that all this would help us to achieve additional progress, because I think we ended up at the level where I would say our negotiators did their utmost, and now we need, I would say, the political stock-taking and a really political discussion on some of the most sensitive issues. And of course, I'm, as you know, a happy warrior, optimist who always believes that everything is possible, and I believe that in this case that we already covered such a huge distance that we'll be able to push it a little bit further and really to come to the positive solutions for everyone in a relatively short period of time. But of course, nothing is agreed until everything is done. I think we learned it through many difficult discussions related to the Brexit over the past 2 years, but so far we've been successful, and I believe that this would be the case also this afternoon.
Amazing, excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
And thank you for your understanding. Thank you.
Brilliant. I should have said, thank you very much. I'll be losing panelists as we go along, as it's for dramatic effect. Let's continue, Minister Pelinszczyńska, on the human aspect that we were talking about and what Ms. Capone actually touched on, this nerve of the disconnect of the human dimension and spirit. How do you see that in Poland?
I agree that the human aspect is absolutely crucial. However, there will be no space for the human activity if there are no walls, theaters, and the hard infrastructure. So, in fact, what we think is crucial is to find a balance between the two. And just to give you an example, according to the European Commission's estimation, Poland's investment needs, and these are not only and rather not human investments related only to the EU's current reduction target by 2030, amount to 240 billion euro. So it's a lot. And in order to implement a successful green transformation, we need substantial funds. And obviously, we receive a lot from the European Union, and we add more, and we will add also from our national funds in order to move forward with the green transformation. By saying this, I don't want to disregard the very important human aspect. We should learn how to effectively communicate with our citizens on all transitions and specifically on the green transition. It's very popular, rightly, to repeat in Europe that no one should be left behind, but our task should be to convince every single citizen that he and she will be not left behind, and she and he is not left behind. And this is much more difficult than just talk among ourselves that no one should be left behind. And to do so, we should use more language which is understandable for the normal people. And in Poland, and I see that this is not only our problem, the green transformation tends to be perceived more and more as something negative, something dangerous. It happens partially due to the huge disinformation. And this disinformation is coming not only from inside Europe, but also from outside Europe. So we should be aware of this threat, of this challenge, and try to not just try to combat this, fight this disinformation with our effective, our understandable narrative, in our communication with citizens. And another factor, very important, in this process of finding the balance between the hard infrastructural investments and the human factor is the place-based approach. And we in Poland, we have very active self-government. 44% of cohesion funds are directly managed by the Polish self-government, and this assures that the investments are very well addressed to specific needs of individual regions, and these needs are completely different in south of Poland and west of Poland, and especially in east of Poland, when our regions border countries which are unfortunately, the aggressor country, Russia, and the country which has been invaded by Russia. So the needs and expectation of citizens in these regions are completely different than in other parts of Poland. And we should understand it, we should take it into account, and we should empathize with their perception that sometimes new park or even the new bike line is not that important as security and investment in small, medium enterprises and building the resilience of their economies and their well-being.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Oliver. We've so far been talking about the narrative and what things are being done at local level so far. But at the ESC, can you give us a little bit of the flavor of the thinking with regards to cohesion policy and candidate countries joining the European Union?
Maybe I can make one sentence on the remark of Maroš Šefčovič, because I think he was right. He said that cohesion policy replied much more effective to crisis that we faced. And I think we live in a more and more unstable environment. We see that unforeseen events become more regular, more pronounced. And I think it is important and crucial that Europe reacts to this. And I think we did. If we look to the recent COVID crisis, I think we did. It was an extraordinary reply. And since we are facing the European elections and also a threat of more and more populist and right-wing extremists, I would say I don't want to imagine how the situation was without our pronounced reply at European level. So I think this is important, but at the same time, of course, this flexibility should not sacrifice the actual objective of cohesion policy, long-term investment in the poorest regions, to have really a stable cohesion policy. This is one point. The second, you mentioned candidate countries, and they are important for us because I think cohesion policy will play a crucial role when it comes to integration of these countries. And the integration will not start 2030, 2032, whenever the first countries will join. It starts before. It starts before. We have to prepare them, and we have already to invest in convergence and social and economic convergence. We are convinced that cohesion policy will play a key role here to invest in these countries. And it's not only a question of money, it's also a question of ability of the actors, of political actors, but especially of the social and economic actors. So therefore we try to involve the representatives of civil society and social partners already now in our work. We prepare, for example, right now an opinion on the future of enlargement policy and cohesion policy, and we invite and we involve already representatives from the candidate countries in our discussions. And recently we had a hearing, and it was an enormous request for participation from these countries. So there is a need for more involvement. We are doing this. And the second point, of course I agree that cohesion policy must be tangible for people. Tangible for people. If we say it's the glue that keeps Europe united, then citizens should feel it. And this is also a responsibility for all of us at national level. I know it from my own country that sometimes I would say the need or the function of cohesion policy is a bit underestimated, and we make Europe only responsible for all the negative developments but not for the positive investments. But really, in order to meet the demands of the people, of the citizens, we need a shared management between the regional actors and the civil society and social partners, the actors at ground. I think this is absolutely needed to have this shared management and a partnership principle. I think then cohesion policy can and will play the key role to keep Europe united, also with a view already to future enlargement.
Great. Excellent. Loredana, any quick remarks before we open the floor to questions?
Sì, il panel è stato estremamente interessante.
This was really an interesting panel discussion, I must say, and I'll try and make a few comments on what I've heard and the questions about competitiveness. Sorry, how is this measured? Is it something that's looked at one point in time, or is it looked at over time? California has always been known as one of the most competitive regions, where you have lots of companies who have grown there and developed and has a very high GDP. But we tend to say other regions are less competitive. Full stop. What efforts can we make to render them more competitive? Isn't that really the fundamental essence of cohesion funds? It's to make regions and territories more competitive. And how do we go about doing that? Unemployment, immigration, on the one side, of course, and on the other side, resilience. But how can you go about discussing resilience when you have immigration and unemployment? Well, we've seen an example of this. We saw it during COVID. Young people, many young people from Puglia with qualifications and great value found employment in other parts of the world. And because of smart working and teleworking possibilities, many of them came back to Puglia and have worked from home, from their own region, from a beautiful region with a wonderful climate. You know, that's my promotional spot for 2 minutes. Please do come and see us.
Yeah.
Ma noi amiamo stare dappertutto.
Well, I won't comment on that, but we're waiting for you. Come visit us in Puglia. To get back to what I was saying, why did these young people come back? Well, we've been working on high bandwidth, so they had very good internet connections. This is not something that was just given to us. We had to fight for this. We had to fight for the possibility of investing 130 million euros in high-width broadband and fiber optics. In Italy, some people said, 80% of the cohesion funds going to the south and 20 going to the north is passé, is not something that we need anymore. Now we need to concentrate our investments in the north, where we have the Alps, which is a mountainous region where it's difficult to have good Wi-Fi. But down in Puglia, Wi-Fi was supposed to have been sufficient for us. Maybe people thought that we would believe this idea. Some people stated this as an obvious thing, but we fought back and we fought hard to get our fiber done in Puglia, which has helped us, has made us more resilient. And that's why I, of course, understand the need to bring together infrastructure and the human factor. And the human factor really should be the end game. We can't just have resilience as a part of our projects. It's something that comes over time, that comes with systems being put in place, like telemedicine, remote medicine that we've put into place. We come from an area which is underprivileged, which is disadvantaged. Our hospitals aren't as effective as in other areas. So we've had to use new technologies, new services. We need all of this to bring us in line with other citizens so that our people feel that they are just as important as other Italian citizens, because this is the only way to bring mobility. Otherwise, we'll just see people leaving and they'll go and live where the better hospitals happen to be. New technology has been an opportunity for us. Cohesion policy is useful for digital things, for the environment, for the social aspect of things. There are 1,000 ways of using cohesion funds. And my conclusion would be, Commissioner Ferreira, a perfect crime. A perfect crime that happens in Italy, of course. We say that cohesion and development funds were not sufficient to bridge the territorial gaps and disparities. And then what happens? Well, cohesion policy has been centralized by a law, which makes it impossible for territories and regions to be able to use the funds, to be able to manage the funds. This is something that might need to be encouraged using technical assistance, not by taking the competence away, not by re-centralizing these funds and taking it out of our hands. It makes it difficult for us to use them and to manage them. And putting money in the centre is fine. Yes, it does have a knock-on effect and it helps the peripheral regions which are struggling a bit. But this is really a perfect political crime, and we need to do something about it. How are we going to do that? We need to work on the five-pronged axis, have all the stakeholders involved. Everyone should be able to look to the future and make things better because they know they will get the technical assistance that they need. And all of us should be able to improve our competitiveness. We should all be able to aspire to being competitive, and not thinking that, you have some people who are good, who are rich, and who know how to market their products, and then there's everyone else. And I'm sure you remember the theory of driver areas, the locomotive areas. They will pull everyone along and everyone else will just eventually feel the trickle down. I cannot believe in that. I oppose that idea, and I do it very deliberately because the Cohesion and Development Fund policy was to move away from that kind of ideology. It's supposed to make it possible for territories, for regions to regenerate, to think of their own development that is sustainable for the environment, for the economy, and for the people, because those people are not any worse than any other people.
Thank you very much. I think I speak for some people in the audience. You bring some energy to this morning. It's really great. I need to take elocution lessons from you. Let me bring Jackie now on stage just to talk us through a few of the questions that have come up, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions also from the audience, and then we'll take a break.
Thank you very much, Javier. And this discussion is prompting lots of questions from you. Start with one just come in fact, talking about, it said, when we talk about the triple transition, how can we talk about this when some regions still suffer from a lack of basic infrastructure? So when we talk about the asymmetric impact of the transitions that could widen disparities, how can regions catch up? How do you see that issue? Broadly, lots of questions, as you would imagine, about funding, some relating to the amount of funding. So somebody saying, don't the pressing issues mentioned, demographic change, skills, needs, poverty, and so on, all require massive financial expansion of European social funds plus? Somebody else saying, no, the problem really here is absorption capacity. Then the whole debate started about that. But a question that came up yesterday about the proliferation of funding instruments, saying, how can we avoid that we introduce a new fund every time we have a new problem? And give the example here of the Just Transition Fund, saying, couldn't that be incorporated into the ERDF to simplify matters? Then there are questions around performance-based, results-based, more of that approach, which we also discussed yesterday, and simplification. Someone saying, too much results orientation in EU funds counteracts the innovation capacity of funds to pilot new methods and ideas. And the questioner warns, be careful. So that flexibility here as well. And how can you ensure additional obligations on cohesion funds, like conditionality, don't lead to additional red tape? So a concern here about balancing conditionality and simplification. And lastly, Javier, you talked this morning about being more philosophical on a Friday morning. And we've talked about no one should be left behind. And someone asking, why do people, especially in member states that receive a lot of funding, feel left behind? Is it because of an unequal distribution of the money? Is it a question of inadequate communications? Why, even when so great attempts are made to make them feel included, they still feel left behind? So a little bit more philosophical. Make of that what you will.
Very good. Thank you so much. That's a whole menu. The coffee break is cancelled. Let's see from the audience if we have anyone with a question in the last few minutes that we have. And if you do, please raise your hand and wait for the mic to get to you. And if not, let's see from this menu of questions in the sort of next 5-10 minutes. Oliver, let's go to you. I mean, lots of, you want to pick one or two of these things?
Yeah, there was the question of the different funds and overlapping programs.
Or
and
a new problem, a new fund, a new problem.
Yes.
That's the question,
and I think we see the same with the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Facility and Cohesion Policy Programs. Both are also following the same, I would say, the same aim to tackle green and digital transition. So this is important that we have no more or less overlapping here. This is, from our point, it's really important to avoid further overlaps and confusion in the implementation of these programs. At the same time, we see that every region has a different point of departure. This was also mentioned. No one should be left behind. Means in regions in Spain, maybe something different than in regions in Austria. So once again, this is important that we have tailor-made policies, and here we need really the involvement of all the regional actors and the social partners when it comes to the implementation. We also, what I think we need to speed up the implementation of cohesion programs, because really the clock is ticking and the regions face important and difficult challenges. We just recently we discussed the Blue Deal. I would like to bring this in because we are talking about the Green Deal, and I agree. Of course, the Green Deal must be in line with competitiveness, but also with the social needs. So we need a Green Deal which is social and competitive at the same time. And we see now from different regions also more and more demands to have a European coordinated approach when it comes to water management. And not only from the regions that are the most affected from droughts, of course, in the Mediterranean area, but surprisingly, the Polish employers come to us and say, we have a problem, more and more problem with water management. Droughts, but also infrastructure. We need more investments in infrastructure. So I think this is another area where we need also a more coordinated approach at European level. And once again, if we talk about the Blue Deal, then it can mean totally different things in countries where they are facing really severe droughts, where the agriculture is affected, where the economy is affected. But in other areas, we have still, and some millions of Europeans have still no access to safely managed drinking water. So this is also, I would say, a question of a basic right. But in the end, it is about investment in also water infrastructure. And I think here we need a more, let's say, coordinated approach at European level. We need more knowledge, more data that is comparable. We need the coordinated policy, and then only in the end we have to talk about funding. Maybe it's only about a new coordination, for example, one specific fund for this. So this is also one of our ideas, to have a blue transition fund and not programs in water policies that are, I would say, allocated in different funds. So once again, I think we need more streamlining in the let's say in the design of the different funds.
Excellent, Minister. From that menu of questions, anything that caught your attention?
Many things caught my attention, but perhaps since I don't think that people would like the coffee break to be cancelled, so just
not a good idea if we want this to be a popular conference.
Not a good idea, neither for us, not for the next panel,
yes.
And perhaps not for the cohesion fund. So, just one remark. I think that we need to be realistic. We expect a lot from cohesion funds, and it's good to be ambitious, but it's not good if our ambitions are so far-reaching that we become a little bit unrealistic. On the one hand, we want the cohesion funds to be co-owned by everyone. On the other hand, we would like it to be quick and effective. On the one hand, we would like it to be adjusted to the needs of every single region. On the other hand, we would like it to bring the competitiveness of the whole Europe and the huge structural change in member states and the European Union. So it's, if we really want cohesion funds to solve our problems, all our problems, it will not work. So what is crucial is that we need to prioritize. We need to say, we need to identify what is the most important for us, for the European Union, for the individual member states and the regions at this point, and in this specific situation in Europe and globally. And that's why we have this initial idea of the unified system, a joint frame of programming and implementation of all EU and national policy focused on achieving transformation goals, but this idea should be based on cohesion policy, change, revitalized, but still cohesion policy, which is deeply anchored in place-based approach and important role of self-governments and regions. So that would be my answer to some of the questions, and I understand that it's not possible to answer all of them, but to be ambitious but realistic, and then we can move forward.
And some for last few remarks, a couple of minutes, and then we'll go for a break. Loredana.
E solo per rispondere,
Simply to respond to a question that I think I heard about distances. Well, what is it that we're talking about? We're talking about the ability to coordinate available resources and use them effectively. So that's also about deciding how they're spent. And I really think that there is a problem here. I genuinely think that there is a problem with regard to the coordination of the funds. Some funds might have the same objectives, but are framed in different general funds. So what I'd like to do is to underscore an experience that I myself had, and I thought it was amazing. I worked on economic programming in our town hall a number of years ago, and I followed a meeting, a seminar about the management of European funds. It was financed by Brussels. It took place in Paris. I think it was called Directoria. If I'm not mistaken, it had a very strong training component for administrators, local and regional governments, not the civil servants themselves, but the administrative bodies at local and municipal level. It was a 5-day full immersion forum, and all of us there understood not only the lines of EU funding and how they worked. So if you know the general financing instruments and then know what the implementing lines are, then you can program better. It allows people to give the right political direction to the civil servants. I don't think this was done again. I haven't seen it organized again, but I think it was a really useful experience, because one of the topics when it comes to the use of EU funds is knowing where to find the funds, how they work, how you spend them, and how you put them into an overall cohesive view. It's institutional capacity that we need to be built, for example. So it's building technical capacity via a seminar. And that's really useful. I think that is probably one of the most useful ways of doing things. It gives all of us, all of the regions, the same possibilities. It puts us on an equal footing. And I think that's really very important. Thank you.
Grazie. We have one question at the back from the audience. If you wait for the microphone and say who you are and make the question very short.
Thank you so much. My name is Marin Florian and I'm coming from the European Economic and Social Committee. I have a short question. What do you think about having social conditionalities attached to the cohesion policy, like we have in the common agriculture policy? Thank you so much.
Great. Who would like to take this? I guess, Oliver?
Yes, since Florian comes from my committee, I have, of course, a very positive approach to this. I think we have conditionalities is maybe not the right word for the investments, but I think it's a question of social convergence, and this must be the criteria what really brings regions forward and what is tangible for people. As we said, we need this people-centered approach. They must feel that cohesion policy works for them and brings real improvements. I would say this should be the criteria. If you call it social conditionalities, I would be absolutely in favor. But we should not misunderstand that those investments are not only social investments, they are also strategic investments in competitiveness, because without this social cohesion, we will have in the long term also a problem with competitiveness. It was mentioned, we have a brain drain in many regions, and this we have to tackle. For me, this goes hand in hand with increased competitiveness. So therefore, social conditionalities, yes, but they are also an important contribution to economic convergence and to competitiveness.
Brilliant. And I feel that we need to end on a high with lots of unanswered questions and more things to say. So I'll invite Jackie back to take us to the break. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Javier and his panel for a great discussion. Thank you so much to you all. And I am sure we are going to come back on many of these issues in our final panel this afternoon when we try to chart the way forward, the future for cohesion policy. But we're now going to take a 30-minute break back here, 10 to 12 sharp, for our next panel, where we're going to focus on cohesion as a shared objective for all policies. Coffee is served. Please come back when you hear the bell ringing.
I hope it was
See you later.